What if I introduced you to a doctor whose first line of action was not medication and supplements, and she told you not to use hand sanitizer? Stay tuned. Welcome back, my friends. My name is Sarah. I'm known as Carnivore Yogi. Thank you so much for being here and clicking on today's video. Today, I am super excited to introduce you to Dr. Catherine Clinton. Now, all of her information will be linked in the show notes for you guys below, as well as a ton of very detailed timestamps. Spent a lot of time going through this episode to make sure everything is really segmented out in ways that you can understand. Now, what we really talk about a lot in this episode is gut health, and her first line of action for gut health actually is not probiotics. We go into that. We talk about how our world environment now, the environment that we live in, is really destroying our health, and how she really works with people who are chronically ill and extremely sick before she has them do a ton of dietary changes, what the lifestyle changes are that she has them to make. So I really do hope that you guys enjoyed this episode with Dr. Clinton. Again, all of her information is in the show notes, along with those very detailed timestamps, so you can navigate through this episode and go back to different parts of the episode that resonate with you. Now, I want to take a moment to thank the two sponsors of today's episode, which make those things like timestamps available to you guys. The first one is going to be Optimal Carnivore. Now, I'm a huge fan of their desiccated beef liver as well as their grass-fed organ meat supplement, and stay tuned. They've got a really amazing brain supplement on the way to you guys. And my discount code there is carnivore uppercase Y. These are things that we use in our home when we're not regularly consuming organ meats, because I do believe that that's a wonderful way to fill in any nutritional gaps. So check out Optimal Carnivore and use my code carnivore uppercase Y. The second sponsor of today's show is Upgraded Formulas. Now, yes, they have amazing magnesium, potassium, and other things, but the thing I like about Upgraded Formulas is that you can actually test to see if you need these things. I am not a huge fan of taking supplements if you don't need them. And I think a lot of us are taking things that we don't necessarily need. So with the Upgraded Formulas hair tissue mineral analysis with a consultation, that is a great way for you to truly understand if you are taking things that you don't need, or if you have a mineral imbalance that can be causing you trouble sleeping, trouble losing weight, fatigue issues, how you can correct that using that consultation. So my code there is Yogi12 or Yogi. Thanks again for my two sponsors. Enjoy today's episode. All right, guys, thank you so much for coming back and tuning in. I am very excited about today's guest. I've been following her for quite a while on social media. I love everything that she talks about and can't wait to introduce you to her and her work. So Dr. Clinton, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I love what you're doing. I too have been following your work, and I just love being able to join in community and spread the word. It's so important.
It truly is. It really is. And I was talking to you before I hit the recording. I'm like, there's so many topics I want to talk with you about today, so I'll try to stay organized. But before we jump into that, if you could just give my audience a little background about what it is that you do, how you got into quantum physics, and how you treat patients.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I am a licensed naturopathic physician here in Oregon. And when I was in medical school, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which is an autoimmune condition that attacks the colon. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto thyroiditis, Lyme disease, multiple GI infections. And so I was really in a place to kind of piece my health back together in a physical way. I, I was seeing all kinds of doctors, naturopathic physicians and MDs and acupuncturists, and really in a wonderful spot to heal. And, so many of us, when we get diagnosed with a chronic condition, we are so desperate to get back to that pre-diagnosis state, right? Getting that quality of health where we can work and be with our families and enjoy our kids and our partners, and all of that stuff is really important. But if that's the level we stop at, there's so much that we're missing out on in life, right? And that's where I really was. So I was able to piece my physical health back together, which was amazing for myself. It was amazing for my patients to do the same thing. But there was something really missing. I use the analogy of a puzzle, and we've all put together a puzzle, right? And there's one little part that's kind of sticking up, and the puzzle piece fits, but it's just not aligned. And that was sort of how it was for me. Like, I was healthy and productive and living the life I wanted, but there was some just greater disconnect, a real sort of desperate longing for connection and community that I didn't have. And that's really where I found quantum biology. I started researching mitochondrial health, and from there it was just like,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And it was something that was always there in medical school, and here at the university, the quantum doctor is here, and he is amazing, and lectures, and what the bleep do we know came out when I was in medical school, right? And so there was a quantum physics sort of medical convention, and really had to do with the power of our thoughts and how that impacts our biology and our physiology. So it's always been sort of an interest, but it wasn't until I really dove in that all the pieces came together, and it was just like a fireworks, and now I just can't get enough. Um, it's
Yeah.
really, truly amazing. And quantum biology not only unlocks this understanding of our own body and what health and disease means, but for me, it unlocks this literal place in the world. Like, I've found my place in the world, and it's an understanding too of what our external terrain holds for our health, and why it's really important that we build our resilience as a society so that we can hold industry accountable, because so much of our quantum biology and our quantum health depends on clean air and clean water,
Yep.
and there's only so much that we can do as individuals. And not to downplay that, I garden and do my part, but I'm no match for these huge multi-billion-dollar industries. And so that was another piece that I really love about quantum biology, is that it is absolutely inseparable, our biology from the biology of the world and the greater ecosystem we live in. They're just really one and the same.
Yeah, it's so funny when I start talking about just healing your body. The first thing I talk about now, it used to be food, is connecting with nature. And a lot of people kind of roll their eyes, and I think they think it's too simple and it's too easy. And I'm like, but nature is not stupid. That's the genius thing. And when we can tune our bodies to nature, you can go off grid every now and then. And if you can just see the sunrise every day and start to reconnect with nature, you start to see your health completely change. But that's, like I said, sometimes people's eyes glaze over. So how do you manage that with your clients and your patients?
Absolutely. I like to really get them converted into someone that's really excited about quantum biology, right? So I try to place them in that same place and sense of connection that I feel, right? So I really try to talk about the science and build that understanding so that we know it's not just this sense of beauty that we get when we're in nature, or a sense of peace or calm or fresh air or something that we already know about, right?
Right.
much, much deeper than that. And when you get into the relationships of how our biology works in nature, in the greater ecosystem, the world around us, you really see that it's part of this intricate communication network that's inseparable. So once you kind of lay the foundation out for people and explain that what they're experiencing in their health is a direct result of this disconnection that we have with nature, because it is literally driving our biology. And when you look at quantum physics and you look at what's happening with photons of light, sunlight, or sound, or frequencies, EMFs of everything, right? The people we're around, the food we're eating, of course, non-native EMFs, like the screen I have in front of me that
I
I'm
know.
talking with you through. But the amazing thing is that is such a small piece, and
Yeah.
we are standing on something much, much bigger and much more powerful. It has the capacity to hold all of that and still be healing, right? One of my pet peeves is when I see someone talking about wiring through the ground and how that takes away the effects of grounding. And it's
Yes.
just like, oh, please don't say that.
Mm.
The earth is so much bigger than some of the wiring that we're putting through for our telecommunications and whatnot. It just doesn't stand a chance.
Yeah.
Not that non-native EMFs are great for us, and we shouldn't be concerned. That's not my point. My point is the earth is greater than all that, and we are really in relationship with it. It feeds into us and we feed into it. It really is that bidirectional and co-creative. So please don't let anyone say that power lines above you or below you are taking away the earth's ability to heal in a relationship like that, because it's just not true.
So glad you said that because, I do have a lot of friends that can get into that kind of perfectionist mindset when we talk about quantum health. And I just want to reach people. Most people that are watching my channel are not going to even have that concern, but I want to reach people on a basic level and just teach them, like, when you're outside, the water network in your body is tuning with the sounds of the birds in the air and tuning with the sound of the wind. And that is, thinking about your body made up of so much water, that can improve your health. Just listening to those sounds and being outdoors, and the nitric oxide, and the electrons you gather from bare feet on the ground. And don't try to make everything be perfect. We can't all go off the grid and live in a hardwired home, and it just isn't realistic for everyone. And so I don't want that message to get to a place where people feel like they have to be perfect in order to get the benefits of nature.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. We are an imperfect mess
Yeah.
living in this world, and the world can hold that. That's the
Yeah.
really exciting thing, is that there's space for that. And our bodies are meant to detox isn't the right word, balance,
Yes.
recalibrate
Yes.
um, from that. And so I absolutely agree. We shouldn't downplay nature, and that's the really exciting piece, is talking with people about how the science behind this really gives that impetus and motivation and understanding of something we've always intuitively known, right?
Mhm.
Like, I mean, since I was a kid, my thoughts make my tummy hurt.
Yeah.
I was the kid in
Me
first
too.
grade,
I want to
always in
go
the midst
home with the
of
upset stomach. Yep.
upset
Me
stomach.
too.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a kid going to school in the South, and we still had corporal punishment.
Oh, we
So
did.
kids would,
Atlanta.
yeah, oh,
They did
good.
spanking. We got spanked if we were bad in school. I went to a private Christian school, and I was terrified to get paddled, it was humiliating.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. And I think I might be a bit older than you. I went to a public school and it was still allowed at that point.
Wow.
And it was so, and I was scared. And so I didn't tell my parents. They were like, hey, you have to get used to school at some point. And I couldn't tell my teachers because obviously that wasn't a safe option. So, we've always intuitively kind of have this sense that our thoughts affect our health, the energy of others in our community
Mm.
affects our health, seasons affect our health. I mean, there's this intuitive knowing, but we get so busy that intuition turns into like, oh yeah, I know nature, it's good for me. It turns into this really trivial piece when it is actually the most paramount foundational building block of our health.
It is. And I talk about her a lot on my podcast, and my listeners already know this story, but my daughter has non-speaking autism. She's 14, and she has always been like an earth seeker. I mean, and I used to try to stop her, and we would always, you got to put your shoes on. But when she comes home from school, the first thing that she does is like go and lay down in the backyard. And I never could quite understand that. And when it was like freezing cold outside, she would always try to go out there with as little clothing as possible to get her cold therapy. And, you know, as a mom, I wanted to, don't get too cold and don't get dirty. And now I'm just like, go roll in the yard. It's fine. You don't have to wear a coat. She does. The one thing she does when we hike, though, that is not great is that she'll jump into streams. And my husband's always like, oh my God. I'm like, but once I understood structured water, and once I understood the quality of the electrons that she's gathering from that water, I stopped freaking out about it. I'm like, she's brilliant. Like, she knows what the medicine that her body needs to, get more charge. But we dismiss the children so quickly.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm so glad you shared that story. And we see it in kids all the time, right? They want to take their clothes off in public, then they get to a certain age and they get home. At least my kids will wear their clothes in public mostly, but
Yeah.
will get home and take off their clothes and go outside. Absolutely. It's this really instinctual. It was just like we see in our pets, right?
Yes.
Um, my dog is very connected with us, but will insist on being outside if it's a sunny day, sitting, on the other
Oh
side
yeah.
of the wall. If
Yes.
we're inside, he'll be outside, right near us, downloading that information. There's that intuitive knowing that's absolutely present that we've just really walked away. Our world is insanely busy. I mean, we
Yes.
are just bombarded with things and information. It's really overwhelming. And so when we can kind of clear a little bit of space in our life, or if we can get excited from information that we're learning that brings us back to that instinctual knowing, it's really an amazing thing to see. I see it with my patients who start exploring quantum biology and ways to improve it and support it. And it just unlocks this sort of understanding of a fractal world that we live in, sort of, the matrix, so to
Yes.
speak.
Yeah.
And you start to see things differently, and you start to see people's uh, reactions differently and your reactions differently. It really changes. It's really a paradigm shifter, in my opinion.
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to ask you is, it's funny, I get a lot of questions on my YouTube channel and from listeners. And someone said the other day, well, can you make a video about how you would have someone eat if they were metabolically unhealthy? And it's funny because instead of thinking how they should eat, I was thinking how they should live,
Yeah,
before we even
absolutely.
get into the food. So when you have someone who comes to you who's metabolically unhealthy, which I'm sure is the majority of your patients, what kind of lifestyle changes would you have them make right away? And then how do you explain so they kind of maybe adhere to that, like what type of science do you educate them with? What type of things do you tell them?
Well, I keep it basic,
Mm-hmm.
because people that are in front of me are sick, right? And we
Mm-hmm.
only have, I've been there, there's only a sliver of attention and energy you have when you're not feeling well. So I try to keep it really basic, and I start with um, talking about how our mitochondria are really our powerhouses, because a lot of people already know that, right? And so I don't go straight into the quantum biology of our mitochondria. I start with something that's a little more accessible. Okay, we all know our mitochondria is important for health, and we can see how it's important for the condition you are here in front of me for. And so once we just start that conversation about mitochondria, I talk about circadian rhythm and how our mitochondria are really scavenging for these free electrons in our environment, right? And so I try to start there and start, instead of going into lattice bound hydrogen, the whole thing that people's eyes glaze over, right? I
Yeah.
mean, they get there because it's so exciting, but I have to work with them a little bit and start that in bite-sized pieces.
Yes.
And so that's where I start. I start with the mitochondria. I start with the obvious connection with whatever they're dealing with in front of me. And most of the people I see are dealing with GI conditions or autoimmune conditions. And so we start there, and I really dumb it down to mitochondria and the electron transport chain, and how these flows of electrons create a voltage in our mitochondria. And we know when there's a dip in that, that's associated with ill health and exactly what you're dealing with. So let's talk about how we can get those electrons. And so the thing I start with is circadian rhythm. And what I talk with them about is AM sunlight, just that download of going outside, or even, people can, their health can be so varied that it's even wrap up in a blanket and sit by an open window. It's really getting that natural light in any way that we can. And some of us do have obstacles to going outside and standing barefoot in the AM
Yeah.
sunshine, especially when we're not feeling well. And so we can take these small steps, and I talk with them about how getting that AM sunlight sets up this whole biological cascade. We've got that dumping of dopamine and serotonin, which is later converted when we lower the lights, again, when we're in rhythm with our ecosystem and the sun uh, in our system. We see that dumping of serotonin from AM sunlight gets converted into melatonin at night when we lower the lights. And that melatonin is doing so many different things. It's helping our immune system regulate and balance. It's helping our sleep, which is like a laundry list of things. It's helping our growth hormone. There's so many things that just being mindful of aligning our rhythm with the solar rhythm can do. And like I said, that can look like taking whatever you're drinking in the morning and going outside for 5 minutes, right? I love
Yes.
it when people get to the point where they're like, "This is so much fun. This is feels so good. How do I chase those electrons?" And then we get into movement outside and grounding and bare feet and all of that stuff. But I start small and
Yes.
get them to take a week. I challenge patients to take a week tending to their circadian rhythm and balancing with the solar system. And it doesn't have to be this black and white perfection type of thing. It's lowering the lights, right? So we lower our lights to something more like the salt lamp behind me. More red tones, candles, firelight in the winter. There's so many different options, but it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be something out of anyone's reach. It can just be changing those light bulbs out from those really, LED blue light dominant spectrum light bulbs to something a little bit more incandescent and more lower in that blue light spectrum. There's so many different ways to approach it, and it can be really fun. Like my kids, I really like to get my family involved. They help me lower the lights. We do it kind of in a staged thing. I live in the Pacific Northwest, so in the winter it gets dark at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
and we're not weirdos. We don't just then
Go to
walk
bed.
around with our candle,
Right.
um, but there are absolutely ways to change your lighting and lower that blue light. You can wear blockers
Mhm.
with glasses. There's so many different options out there, but I like challenging my patients to try it for a week. Try it for a week and feel the difference with just that alignment. And I find that I don't need to do anything else after that to convince them, because you just blow the windows right off, the doors right off, the hinges, right? Because they feel so much better.
Yes.
And it's a different feeling than a pharmaceutical, because
Mhm.
they're necessary sometimes. Steroids in my line of work really can stop that sort of positive feedback loop where people are spiraling, right?
Yeah.
And they're really powerful, but they there's always this feeling of not sure how to describe it, of disconnect that is there with pharmaceutical options, especially ones like steroids and things that really have a systemic, broad
Oh, yeah.
affect, affect your mind, affect your
Yeah.
mood. And so I think that opening the door to that is really, really fun, because I love my herbs. I love eating good food and talking with people about good food choices, but it takes a while, right? If I'm
Yes.
to get someone to feel better on an herbal combination for like adrenal health and energy and mitochondrial health, I'm like, please give it 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
and 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 not that those things aren't powerful. Synergistically, it's all amazing. It's all a part of the picture. But to get patients and people excited about what can happen over a week if you align with the ecosystem you live in, I find is the most powerful tool in my toolkit as a doctor.
Yeah, I love that you use it as a doctor. And I wish that I want to just keep spreading this message so more and more doctors will, because, in my own health journey, I started working with Dr. Courtney Hunt a little over a year ago. And that was the first thing she told me to do was sunrise. And I was just like, fine, I'm just reluctant about it. What good is that going to do? But and she does her hikes where she does live streaming during sunrise every morning, and so I kind of felt bad, like, well, she's doing it every day, so I need to start. And then it became like you said, after about a week I was like, I don't want to miss this. Like, I love this so much, I don't want to miss sunrise anymore. And I haven't in the last year missed a single day. And I get messages from people on my Instagram. This is the really cool part of just kind of sharing my experience of people like, oh my gosh, Sarah, I've been doing sunrise for the last month and I'm in love with it. It's so wonderful. My energy's so much better. And I didn't take any supplements to change this. I didn't change my food. I didn't change anything else. All I did was do what you said to do and just start seeing sunrise every morning. And I'm like, yes, like it's it's just such a cool thing that to spread the news, because just such a small thing makes such a huge difference in your health. It really does.
It really, really does. And I can't agree with you more. I mean, that's so exciting to find people talking about quantum biology. And I just heard about Courtney Hunt I made a reel and people tagged her. And I was like, who's this
Ah,
lady?
yeah.
you know, and, I really need to get out of my cave. But um, it's so amazing to talk about it because this is the future of health. This is the future of
Yes.
our health. This is the future of the health of the planet we live on.
Mhm.
Biology isn't just us, right? We get so narrow-minded and focused
Mhm.
that sometimes I hear people talk about biology as if it only pertains to humans, right?
Right.
Biology is life, right?
Yes.
So quantum biology pertains to life on this earth. And so the more we can spread the message and get people talking about it, the more we can lift the health of this planet and everything on it. Is just, I've never encountered something so overwhelmingly positive and exciting. It's just like I get giddy when I
Yeah,
talk about it. It's really, really amazing. Um,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You said you work with a lot of people that have gut issues, and I've been doing a lot of research on how circadian biology can actually really tie in with gut health and really help gut health. I'd love to hear from your stance as a doctor. I know you have to probably do sometimes more than circadian biology with people to help them with their gut health, but just how you kind of see that play in, and what kind of different conditions that you've been able to help with that.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a part of every single gastrointestinal condition that I
Mhm.
see. And of course, by the time you're seeking out care and you have a diagnosis, there's some peeling of layers that need to happen, right? Sometimes sunrise isn't enough. Absolutely. But the correlation between the two is just phenomenal. We know that our every cell really has a circadian clock in it, and that includes the cells, our enterocytes, the cells that line the gastrointestinal tract. And it also includes the gut microbiome that is living on top of those cells, right? Both of those things have a circadian clock in them, and they are expecting this feedback loop. They expect to be living in rhythm with the thing that sets our planet's circadian rhythm, right? And that is the sun. So when we are living against our circadian clocks, which is, it's really cellular, right? When we talk about circadian rhythm and our circadian clocks, we think of it sort of like an alarm clock in a way, like, okay, my rhythm, I'll try to do my rhythm. But really, it's the internal working of every cell. We have these circadian clocks in all of these cells because we live in a solar system, right? We live in a chain of flow of photons coming down from the sun, and that's what powers life on this planet. So when we're talking about gut health, we have to understand that circadian clocks are in both of these things. The cells that line our GI tract and the gut microbiome. And the cells that line our GI tract are really interesting because there's lots of things happening just within those cells, right? Those enterocytes that line the cells are held together by tight junctions. And when you look at tight junctions underneath a microscope, they kind of look like a zipper to me. Like a Levi's jeans zipper, right?
Yeah.
And when there's something in your GI tract that is irritating the GI tract, whether that's toxins, infections, whether that is misalignment of the circadian rhythm and the circadian clock, all of those things can irritate those enterocytes that line the GI tract and and irritate those tight junctions, right? And so when you look at a tight junction under a microscope that's been irritated, it looks like a zipper that's being like pulled apart. So the zipper isn't being unzipped in just this massive hole, right? There are these microscopic little holes that allow for microscopic pieces of whatever's in the the lumen, the inside of the GI tract. Then it can get into the bloodstream of the gastrointestinal tract, and that goes systemic and undoubtedly, inevitably increases our inflammation. And so there's such a huge piece there when we're talking about inflammation and we're talking about gut health and we're talking about circadian rhythm. I mean, it's all really so aligned. And when you talk about, you can add, excuse me, you can add mitochondria in the mix there, and you just sort of have the trifecta of
Yes.
powerhouses there.
Yes, absolutely.
Excuse me.
It's okay. It's pollen season right here in Atlanta now. Everything is yellow outside. So yeah,
Isn't it
it's,
wild? It
yeah.
is. Yesterday we woke up and I was like, that isn't frost, is it? And it's
No.
like,
And
no.
yeah, I was outside walking this morning and the wind was blowing and it was like clouds of yellow going down the street. I'm like, wow, this is nature. Here we are. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, so yeah, we could add the mitochondria in there. And we see that it's all really connected. Again, our mitochondria have that circadian clock in them, and our gut microbiome really has this crosstalk with the mitochondria in our enterocytes that line the GI tract. So it's this amazing, again, networking, communication network that's inseparable to the world around us. So circadian rhythm, when we're talking about gut health, again, it starts to sound like a broken record over here, but it's
Yeah.
foundational to health. It really is. And of course, people might need a little help getting to a place where circadian rhythm maintains balance in the GI tract, but it absolutely can. It absolutely can.
Yeah, it's one of the things that most of the people that follow me, they've come to something like a carnivore diet, an elimination diet, because their gut issues have gotten so severe. And, you know, when I try to explain the whole circadian rhythm aspect, they're like, yeah, but what supplements do I need to be taking? And I'm like, well, yeah, you can take some that will help. Absolutely. And I've done a lot of talks about that, but you know, that we underestimate the power of sunshine, you know, of maybe even just exposing your belly to sun. Or I put a red light device on my belly, and
Yeah.
that has done amazing things for my gut more than probiotics have done, you know?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it probiotics are like, I really think of the microbiome and excuse me, that was
That's
my didgeridoo. Just have a didgeridoo behind me, and it fell.
just what
Um,
most doctors have in their offices.
the normal stuff. So,
Exactly.
um, and that completely took my mind off of what we were talking about. I'm sorry.
Probiotics. That's
Yes,
okay.
thank you. Didgeridoo, probiotics. Okay, here we go.
Yes.
Um, so probiotics, and really, the gut microbiome, our mitochondria really resemble mycelium in the way that they are networking throughout the body. And it's really fascinating to see the crosstalk between the two. And I agree, like if you are seeding your body with probiotics and then not creating a terrain or a garden that lets them flourish, and circadian rhythm is a huge piece of that, then you're not really affecting life. Quality of life, quality of
Right.
health, right? And in some cases, you can be fighting against it because these strains of probiotics, of microbes, are really dependent on what's happening in your environment. And some of them go in there and don't work well with the native species that you have going on there. It's really, really individual. So pulling a probiotic off the shelf without tending to everything else is not the best way to go about health. And I don't know if you even know this, I have a supplement company and I sell probiotics. I'm not anti probiotics, but you don't see me selling that on
I've
Instagram or
never seen you even mention it on Instagram. Out of all of your content, I never would have known you had a supplement company, not at all.
that. And it's because that's not where I think health is, and I don't think
Mm,
it's bad. Um,
right.
I think there's a great place for them. I'm excited to offer things that are clean and blah blah blah. But my mission here is to get everybody to level up with their quantum biology, because that has to happen for us to really affect health on a societal level and health on a global level and a national level. Um, my probiotic supplements can't do that, right? So I don't even really talk about them because there's something more important, and that's what we're talking about now. So I just bring it up because I'm not anti-probiotic at all, but
Yeah.
it comes in a series, right? And that is not where our health and changing, our family's health and our community's health and our nation's health and our global health, that's not where it comes from. So I love probiotics. I love good food and all those things, but we really have to level up our knowledge, because quantum biology is also about so many other things. It's how we stay healthy, but it's also how we work. Um, Being open to multiple truths at the same time.
It's a tough one
Um,
for people these days.
yeah, oh my goodness, it is really hard. And
Yeah.
when we look at history, it's like, how many times do we do that? How many times do we divide into these groups fighting about
Mhm.
these two different truths? And when we get a little bit of hindsight from more knowledge, from more advanced technology, we see that those truths were part of a bigger truth, right? They're
Yes.
both right. But in the available knowledge and technology, it's like, nope, black or white,
Yep.
and
Yep.
and quantum biology really allows us to not be so binary in the way we explore our world and explore medicine and science. And it gives us a way to really tend to things that we don't think of as medicine, like, are our communities safe? Are our families safe? Are our systems safe? That's not maybe the first thing we think of when we talk about medicine and health, but it absolutely should be.
Yep.
And quantum biology necessitates that, right? It
Yes.
really lays the groundwork for why we need to do that, why we can't just live in isolation and not care. It's all so intimately connected.
Yeah, it is. And I remember during, I think it was your account, maybe it was someone else's, but during the pandemic, I think where you live, didn't they like spray the beaches with bleach at some point? Did were you talking about that? And
Yeah.
how you were just like, oh my gosh, why? That's like the worst thing that they could possibly be
Mhm.
doing, right?
Yes, absolutely. It was actually a beach in Spain that
Okay.
I love. I
Oh,
love it. And they, coming out with the pandemic is just really strange as a doctor, because you've got a lot of people. I had a lot of people that I trusted saying a bunch of different things, right? So it was a little confusing. And then I think I posted about that by April. By
mhm.
April, I was like, oh, okay, slow your roll, people. What are we
Yes.
doing? We can't be spraying beaches. I set up a change.org petition to, about spraying our public spaces, and just this war against germs that's
Yes.
so crazily narrow-minded. I still have a friend that goes through disinfectant tunnels. So to go in to see the doctor, you go through a fumigation
Oh my
tunnel.
gosh.
Right?
I won't allow hand
Oh,
sanitizer in my home. I won't, I'm like, no, don't do it. And I don't think
right.
people really, I think a lot of people just do it because they're told that they should do it. But can we maybe talk a little bit about why someone would definitely not want to go through a fumigation tunnel, but use a bunch of hand sanitizer or antibacterial soap? Why would they not want to do that?
Absolutely. Well, we're talking about, we keep coming back to the importance of that gut microbiome, right?
Yes, yes.
And a lot of people don't realize there's this sense that antibiotics really derange the gut microbiome, right? We
Yes.
know that this can last normally for a year. Sometimes it never bounces back, right? So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you take a course of antibiotics and the gut microbiome gets deranged for a lifetime, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're talking about with hand sanitizer, but on our skin microbiome. And our skin microbiome inevitably interacts with our oral microbiome, right? If we kind of take a second to think of ourselves in a different way, we can think of ourselves as a donut, right? Or a torus, where we're all completely covered in that microbiome, whether it's like our gut microbiome in the center or our skin microbiome on the outside. We actually know that everything within us has a microbiome, but just speaking about the surface and hand sanitizer and antibiotics, they're doing the same thing. They're deranging the microbiome, and that's exactly what we don't want to do. We don't want to do that with our microbiomes. We certainly don't want to do that with the beach's microbiomes, right?
Right.
Stop spraying sanitizers. I just saw something about a light. They've developed a new light that kills all the microbes. And it's like, oh,
No, not all of them.
yeah, yes, all of them. So it's just, it's really the nuanced thinking in our medical system and our scientific world isn't there. And that's an exciting thing about quantum biology for me, is like, hey, this is bigger. This is not this 1 + 1 = 2 type of world. There's a lot happening with the microbiome, and we don't know a lot, but we do know that what you're doing is bad, right? Like, we're really
Right.
in the infancy of knowing what the microbiome does, but what we do know is that it really works as a guild. It works as a quorum. It works as a community, like mycelium. And to know that at the same time as we want to annihilate it is just sort of like gives me whiplash. Because you can have doctors say both things, and it's mind-boggling because
Yeah.
um, that's not how it works. It's important, therefore we don't annihilate it, right?
Right.
So one
Right.
follows the other. Um, and so hand sanitizer is absolutely doing the same thing. And when you talk about looking at the science, um, let's say you have something yucky, ucky bug on your hand, right? And you're using sanitizer. Sanitizer is going to get rid of any beneficial microbes that are on your skin, in your skin microbiome, that help balance and kind of guide, right? It's a community. So they kind of are like, hey, this is how we do it here, da 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 da, right? and and when when we use that sanitizer, it completely deranges that communication between the two. It's just really it's really foundational for health, and it's something that we don't think about, but they're one and the same. Killing those beneficial microbes stops that crosstalk. And so when you look at what's happening with some of the research about, well, what's the best hand sanitizer and what's the best way to clean your hands, right? So we've got hand sanitizer, we've got water and soap, and we've got water. And what we find is that amazing universal solvent water works just as well as to remove harmful microbes, but leaves that beneficial microbiome intact. So that's, just right there, just really encapsulates the power of our quantum biology and the need for clean water, healthy structured water body within us and
Yes.
externally outside of us. It's paramount, and we get really sidetracked into sanitizers and spray that and fumigate, rah.
Yep.
And it's
Yeah.
like, we really forget that water is called the universal solvent because it is.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I
yeah.
just got a lot of people over the weekend. I talked in my stories about how I haven't used any shampoo on my hair in a very long time. I just use water now, which everyone's like, what? How's your hair? Because it's not greasy. It goes through a little detox period, but all I really use is water, occasionally a little apple cider vinegar. And my hair has never actually been healthier before. So I think we kind of underestimate the power of water to help us clean, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. We love our baths at this house,
Yes.
Um, and also we're on a well, so we're pretty conscious. Our baths aren't as luxuriously high as you might think. They're a little
Yeah.
bit lower. But I had someone the other day be like, you're just really messing up their microbiome by doing that. And it's like, oh, well, I said a bath of water, not a bath of soap,
So, right,
we
exactly.
we rinse off,
Yeah.
and that's how we do it. And it's a wonderful way to stay clean and keep that microbiome intact. And it's hydrotherapy is an amazing way
Yes.
to structure the water within.
Oh, yeah.
So huge fan of water therapy over here.
Oh, yeah, me too. Yeah, and that's one really cool thing about, like you said, when you take a bath, you are getting the benefits of grounding, which is basically electron flow to the body, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I love my cold water plunges. This isn't a diss on that, but hot, there's such a
Mm,
binary world that I have to like give a disclaimer, right?
I know, I know.
I'm not against cold plunges,
Yeah.
but a warm bath provides that infrared heat that structures our internal water, intercellular water as well, right? There's a reason why we have this long history of like a warm bath will make you feel better, because it
Yes,
does.
it
That
does.
warmth structures that water within. And so, yeah, absolutely. I love hydrotherapy. It's
Yeah.
something actually naturopathic physicians have a long history of. We do all kinds of
Ah,
funny things, warming socks and hydrotherapy, cold and hot, alternating wet towels, constitutional hydrotherapies. There were whole therapy wards back in the day, in the 20s, and the turn of the century, before Flexner really got to flex his power, right? With the Flexner report came out in 1910, and it was a report with the AMA and the CMA, the Council of Medical Education, and it really set the stage for suppressing alternative medicine, including naturopathic medicine. So
yeah.
that's what I mean. That was my joke of
Yes.
Flexner flexing. Is that a lot of those naturopathic hydrotherapy clinics went away after that, and didn't come back until the 70s and 80s, actually. And
Wow.
so a lot of those things really went underground, but hydrotherapy is an amazing tool to support our health.
Yeah, I love it. I'm a huge fan for sure.
Mhm.
I would love to talk. I know we're getting close to the end because we both have appointments soon, but just briefly touch on psychoneuroimmunology. We've kind of hinted around it a little bit, but I know that that's something that is a big part of your work as well. But I did want to briefly touch on that and kind of get your thoughts on how you help patients with that or just people in general.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this was sort of the step in between when I was sick and piecing my physical health back together and the mitochondrial quantum biology piece. There was this really deep dive into psychoneuroimmunology. And what does that mean? It's a really big word, but
Yes.
basically, right? Basically, it's how our thoughts, how our conscious and subconscious inner dialogue affects our health, literally affects our biology. And a great study that I talk with people about, patients, shows that one session of meditation boosts mitochondrial function. And like, it's wow, how does that happen? Well, it happens through our quantum biology, right? That bound water outside that is mitochondrion is able to capture the frequencies of our thoughts and our feelings. And so psychoneuroimmunology really spans the range of physiological reactions, right? So it affects our matter, it affects our energy, it affects so many different things. And we can see this in so many different ways with so many different studies. The power of our thoughts has a direct impact on our biology and our health. And when we look at what's happening in the body and how things interact, we have a few different ways. Like, our body is constantly creating something called cytokines. They're these chemical messengers, and they have to float through the body, right? And then there's the quantum biology of electrons and electron spins. But when we're talking about, and all of that's amazing and important, but when we're talking about psychoneuroimmunology, what a lot of people don't realize is that we have nerves that go directly from our brain, unbroken, into our GI tract. It's
Ah,
one nerve, it's direct. So there is this direct route where a thought can change what's happening in our gut environment, right? And that's
wow.
directly impacting our inflammation, our mitochondrial health, our quantum biology, our structured water, our everything, right? So psychoneuroimmunology is a really wonderful piece, and it's the second piece that I start people with. I really like to start people with the quantum biology and circadian rhythm so that they start to get that energy and excitement. And then we talk about how our thoughts could be contributing to our ill health. And I do it second because for me it was first, and it
Yeah.
was really, really uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
It's much easier to think it's a lack of the supplement, or
Mhm.
whatever,
The
to
wrong
look at
food. Yeah. Yep.
yeah, to look at ourselves, especially when we don't feel well, is like,
Yeah.
the last thing we want to do. But we are the drivers of this bus, right? And our
Mhm.
thoughts and our subconscious really drive what's happening in us on a really instantaneous way. That direct innervation is there for a reason, and it goes both ways, right? So everything that we were talking about, quantum biology and circadian rhythm, and those circadian clocks in our gut microbiome and our enterocytes that line the gut, it's all part of this messaging bidirectional communication where our gut and our gut microbiome say, whoa, brain, we need to be, doing this because this is happening. We sense this danger signal. So lock up these areas, right? Or, hey, we're in a safe spot. We're in a place of safety and we're ready to thrive, brain. And so the brain starts building new neurons and it's in a place of safety, right? It's this bidirectional. So it's not just the brain and the thoughts affecting the gut and overall inflammation. It's this bidirectional thing. And in that bidirectional nature lies our power to affect health, right? Because, I have struggled with anxiety over my life, right? Those early childhood in the nurse's office,
Yeah.
it started then, right? And so I'm not a stranger to how the sentence, your thoughts impact your health, how overwhelming that can be, especially if you are dealing with anxiety or depression or worry or, any of these things. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, shoot, that makes me have more of those thoughts, right?
Yes.
And so the power in knowing that is knowing that it's bidirectional. And these are neurological circuits that we can impact just the way you would impact a path through the forest. If you're walking it once a week, once a month, it's going to grow over, right? But if you can walk it twice a day, even though there's a million things that are happening on that path at any given moment, little bunnies and birds and worms and all this stuff is happening on that path. But if you can consistently walk it just a couple times a day, you are creating a groove. And that's the same thing that's happening in our neurological circuits if we can think a positive thought once a day, if we
Yes.
can add to that twice a day. So often we get overwhelmed with, oh, these thoughts I'm thinking, they're not making me well, and this is overwhelming, and I'm more anxious, right? That's understandable because this is
Yeah.
a big piece of information, but I want to really encourage everyone to take that empowerment away, that it's bidirectional, and it starts with one thought. And that one thought lays a path, and two thoughts deepen that path. And that becomes a circuit that your body normally goes to, right? So instead of that anxiety pathway or fearful pathway or whatever it may be, we can etch out a new pathway. And so that's really the power that is all reversible. And we can really build resilience and build health wherever we are at. And that's the real power of psychoneuroimmunology and how interconnected our biology is.
I agree. And, I try to encourage, like I have a private group and I'm always trying to encourage them and post things in the group for them to listen to kind of keep in their energy field, because I don't think so many of us realize how powerful our thoughts are. And I've been listening to a lot of Louise Hay lately, which I know I'm late to the party on that one. But just one of the things that she was saying is she said, a lot of people complain and say, oh, these affirmations that you're telling me to do, they're not working. And she's like, well, how many of those did you do? And there's, oh, 3 or so. And she said, okay, well, how many affirmations did you do that were on the other side of that? How many negative affirmations did you do over the course of your day? Because that's kind of the programming that's in there right now. And so,
Mhm.
we do have, and I can definitely say that I've had to change my programming, and it is something we have to work at. And it absolutely affects our health. If we want to get well, if we really want to get well, we have to look at what's going on. Like, what are the thoughts I keep repeating to myself? I'm sick, things are bad, everyone's better than me, I'm just a defective person. And if that's what's playing in your head all the time, then how do you expect to get well? It's a tough thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I love talking with people about reframes, right? So
Hmm.
those inner dialogues are happening for a reason,
Hmm.
right? They have kept us safe at a certain point in our life. And so I really, I've reframed my anxiety sort of as this overprotective mother, where I can
Mm.
be like, thank you. I appreciate you keeping me safe, but right now, So,
Yep.
kind of reframing that because I think it's important that we realize that those thoughts and those things um, are usually artifacts of a situation that made us feel unsafe. And these were ways that we coped with it. And that is so important to honor because we got past that. We did survive it. We are here now, right? And so those thoughts that we want to change, those racing thoughts and anxious thoughts and whatever it is, negative, depleting thoughts, we have to also honor them too because there's a reason why they are there, and in most cases they're a response to an unsafe situation that we've clung onto because of feelings of lack of safety, right? And so that is a survivor trait. That is resilience. So if we can reframe that and not beat ourselves up for having those thoughts, they are foundational to survival. So I think that's important for people to know is to really honor those feelings and try to reframe them in a way where it's like, I see you coming back. I know
Mhm.
why you're here. I
Yeah.
appreciate your watching over me, but I'm going to set you to the side right now because I don't need an overprotective mother, you
Yeah.
know?
I love
Um,
that. I love that. It's so helpful. And yeah, if people can just start to understand that, yeah, those things were there for a reason, but now they're not serving a good purpose. And so it's
right.
time to reframe and to start to try to reprogram the mind for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. It's all so very interconnected.
absolutely. It really is. Well, I feel like we could definitely probably talk another hour or so, but I know we have to get to our next call. So, where can people find you if they want to work with you or just follow your work? What's the best way to do that?
Well, I am Dr. Catherine Clinton everywhere. So I'm drcatherineclinton.com. You can find me at my website. You can find me at Dr. Catherine Clinton on Facebook and Instagram. I love to share information. Like I said, I think we're the swell before the changing tide, right? So I just want to get everybody in on that swell so we can get the tides changing. So I love to share on social media, and yeah, we're very active on there, aren't we?
Absolutely. Sometimes I have to cut myself off a little bit. But, oh, well, thank you again. This has been wonderful. And I can't wait to share this with my audience. So, you guys make sure you go follow her. And thanks again for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure talking with you.
You're so welcome.